Welcome into the PFF State of the Franchise. It is your Carolina Panthers edition. Sam, the Panthers haven't made a ton of moves this offseason, and I think there's a few holes that they need to fill in the draft. We'll get to that in a second. But we have guys like Dontari Poe coming in on the defensive line, Star Lotulelei going out, Jonathan Stewart going out. Maybe the biggest hole, Andrew Norwell, the All-Pro left guard. He's out as well. What are your thoughts on the Panthers and where that roster stands right now?
Yeah, there are some holes, significant holes on this roster. Let's talk about Dontari Poe first, because that's the obvious like-for-like replacement. They've shipped out one nose tackle, brought in another nose tackle for that defensive line, and it's a clear upgrade. I mean, Star Lotulelei has not been the run-stuffing monster that he looked like he might be earlier in his career, and was clearly the second-best defensive tackle on that line, with Kawann Short becoming that perennial All-Pro. They are upgrading dramatically with Dontari Poe, even if Poe hasn't continued to be the dominant force that he looked like he might be early in his career. But he had significantly more pressure last season than Lotulelei did. 18 total pressures, becomes 37 total pressures, and even on a per pass rush basis, that's a significantly better return. And if you're just focused on the run game, again, higher run stop percentage, 5.7 to 6.4. So Dontari Poe should be a significantly better presence alongside Kawann Short on that defensive line and really help them shore up that interior.
Yeah, Poe looked like he was on his way to maybe stardom, and he's ended up a very solid interior defensive lineman, and if nothing else, dependable that he's going to show up. He's played over 800 snaps every year of his career dating back to his rookie season, so he just shows up and he plays. He'll be a solid presence opposite Short. Edge defender seems like it's been this place where they've needed to get younger year over year. Mario Addison's been pretty solid there. A guy like Charles Johnson, you know, he's out of the picture, but they're bringing back Julius Peppers, who had 13 sacks last year, and that sounds like a great number, but we're talking about a guy very late in his career, and 13 sacks, but only 31 total pressures. And when we're looking at future sack totals, that pressure number is the important one. Only 31 total pressures. I don't think we're going to see another 13 sacks from Peppers. This is a place they need to add some youth.
No, that was a big downturn in production from Julius Peppers. The 13 sacks looks fantastic. It was a great result, but his pressure numbers nosedived completely, and his overall PFF grade in terms of pass rushing nosedived as well. So he was getting significantly less pressure, beating players significantly less often than he had been the previous couple of years, even as he became a less dominant every down player and more of a situational guy. Last year, really, despite the 13 sacks, was essentially a red flag to say this guy needs to be replaced as soon as humanly possible. They brought him back. We'll see if he can bounce back from that year, but they would be very well advised to not get sucked into that 13 sacks and to be desperately searching for his replacement in the draft, where they are, I think, reasonably positioned to target one of that second tier of pass rushers. We think Bradley Chubb will be long gone by then, by the overall consensus of him being a top 10 player, even if we're a little bit less high on him. But the NFL isn't as high on a guy like Harold Landry, who looks like the best pure pass rusher in this draft. A guy like Marcus Davenport. You know, these are the next tier of guys could be available where the Panthers pick in that first round.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways that they can go with that pick. By the way, very PFF-y of you to talk about the disappointing 13-sack season by Julius Peppers, but that's what the numbers show going forward. You can't really expect that.
Don't be fooled.
But that number 24 overall pick, there are a lot of potential needs there. We're talking about Norwell leaving at guard, so that leaves a huge hole. Do you want to take a guard? That's actually a pretty good place for value, maybe a Will Hernandez out of UTEP, maybe a Frank Ragnow out of Arkansas. It's certainly a position that you could handle later in the draft, but guard could be a place they go late first.
Or Isaiah Wynn from Georgia.
Yes.
And that potentially would give them the flexibility to address either guard or tackle. The left side of that offensive line now looks very weak for this Carolina Panthers team. Matt Khalil remains the incumbent at left tackle, did not do anything last year to suggest that he can be a franchise caliber player moving forward. Guard is a huge hole with Norwell out of the door. It's now on paper, presumably, Jeremiah Sirles coming over from that Minnesota offensive line, where he was poor as a swing position player there for that offensive line, a sixth offensive lineman for them. So guard is a huge upgrade, but they could use a left tackle as well. Wynn would give them the flexibility to see if he can handle left tackle, try and patch up guard somewhere else, and if you can't, you still got the left guard to go forward with.
Yeah, of course, he played left tackle in college at Georgia, projected to move to guard, but we always say, give a guy a shot at left tackle first
let
him fail first because it's so valuable. You mentioned edge, maybe Marcus Davenport. That might be the most reasonable guy, realistic guy, essentially, as a potential first-round pick that could fall there. We don't really know what the NFL thinks of Harold Landry, even though we're so high on him. Not a ton of other big-name edge defenders there, but I do think it's a place that they need to attack in the draft, even if it's the second, third, fourth round, and at least add some depth and get some youth behind Peppers over there. What about cornerback in the secondary? Is that another place that they might want to attack? Maybe not in the first, but some good second-round depth there as well.
Definitely, not just cornerback. The entire secondary needs an overhaul. It's James Bradbury and a collection of role players that either are too old, are too bad, or just simply need some talent injected to that spot. So, yeah, I think they definitely need an addition at cornerback. I really like Dante Jackson out of LSU, a cornerback who I think would fit that defensive scheme extremely well. He's got incredible quickness, incredible versatility. He's one of the few corners that has played inside of the slot in college, has actually got experience with that unique skill set inside and could get an early exposure to NFL playing time in a role inside and then see if he can handle the outside as well. I think that would be a really nice spot. And then I think there's some safeties they could target as well in those first few rounds that would fit the bill.
Yeah, so the other position I think might be a really nice, probably a second-round type of target, wide receiver, a position where you have a theory on Cam Newton and what they're trying to do, what they've tried to do. Cam Newton misses high quite a bit, so they've brought in those big, tall receivers, but what do you think they should do now at that position?
Yeah, plan A was to surround him with a group of 6'5" receivers he couldn't overthrow. Turns out, one, he could, and two, 6'5" guys can't separate. Plan B was to surround him with a bunch of guys that'll get open underneath and make him into a high percentage passer to Christian McCaffrey, to Curtis Samuel. It turns out he's just not very accurate at that. So let's go with plan C, and let's just give him some receivers that will get open and give him some passes to attempt deeper down the field where he is at his best. Cam Newton, the thing that he does best is those intermediate to deep plays that make huge impacts on a game. So let's get him some guys that'll get wide open, and let's let him attack deep down the field and paper over some of his deficiencies as an underneath passer.
Yeah, so he'll never be the most accurate guy, but this could be the draft to grab a very good, valuable second-round wide receiver, maybe an Equanimous St. Brown out of Notre Dame. He has that 6'4" plus frame, but he's also quick as well. Yeah. He can get open. A smaller guy, Anthony Miller out of Memphis, he can do it all. He can also adjust to off-target passes as well, so that's another important part when working with Cam Newton. That is your Carolina Panthers state of the franchise. Couple of holes to fill in the draft, but it is a draft where they can make a lot of headway at some very important positions of need. That is your Carolina Panthers state of the franchise, powered by PFF Elite.